The Foundations of Kuru, Chapter 1, The Forest of Naimisha. In the hallowed heart of Naimisharanya, where the ancient trees breathe the rhythms of the cosmos, the 12-year satra unfolded in timeless grace. Here, the boundary between the mortal and the divine grew thin, worn away by the persistent heat of tapas. The air was a heavy tapestry of scents, the sharp, purifying smoke of Agnihotra fires mingling with the sweet fragrance of crushed lotus and clarified butter. It was a place where Dharma was not merely a concept, but a living, pulsing force felt in the very roots of the earth. Under the guidance of Saunaka Kulapati, the master of the household, the Brahmanas labored in their spiritual toil. The forest echoed not with the sounds of the wild, but with the resonant, rhythmic chanting of the Samaveda. The vibrations of the sacred verses rippled through the clearing, steadying the hearts of those who sought the ultimate truth. Every gesture was a prayer, and every breath was an offering to the Brahmanas, who sustained the celestial order through their unwavering devotion. Into this sanctuary of peace stepped a traveler whose presence stirred the stillness. Ugrasrava Sauti, the son of Lomaharshana, appeared at the edge of the clearing, his eyes bright with the fatigue of long roads and the weight of untold wonders. He had come from the great city of Takshasila, where King Janamejaya had concluded his terrifying and magnificent snake sacrifice, a yajna that had shaken the foundations of the three worlds. As the traveler approached, the sages paused in their duties. Saunaka, the venerable leader of the satra, rose to greet the visitor. In Sauti, they recognized more than just a wanderer. They saw a vessel of history, a Puranika whose lineage was woven into the very fabric of the sacred lore. The reverence in the air shifted, focusing on the newcomer who carried the echoes of the great king's court within his soul. With the grace required by ancient custom, the Brahmanas offered Sauti the hospitality of the forest. They brought forth water for his tired feet and the refreshing madhuparka to restore his spirit. As he sat among them, the dust of the road falling away, Sauti felt the sanctity of Naimisharanya envelop him. He was no longer a traveler. He was the bridge between the world of kings and the world of the spirit. "O Sauti," Saunaka spoke, his voice like the low rumble of distant thunder. "You come to us from the sacrifice of Janamejaya? Tell us of the wonders you witnessed. Tell us of the lineage of the Kurus, which is as deep as the ocean and as vast as the sky. We are gathered here for 12 years to honor the gods, but our ears thirst for the nectar of the sacred narrative that you alone possess." Sauti looked upon the assembly of sages, their faces illuminated by the flickering Agnihotra fires. He saw in their eyes a hunger for the truth that transcends time. He realized that the story he carried was not merely a history of kings and wars, but a map of the human soul, a testament to the eternal struggle between light and shadow. He felt the weight of the Bharata pressing against his lips, demanding to be set free. "I have heard the great poem composed by Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa," Sauti began, his voice gaining strength. "It is a work that contains everything that is found in the world, and that which is not found within it is found nowhere else. It is the fifth Veda, the light that dispels the darkness of the Kali Yuga. It is the story of the Kuru clan, of their glory, their fall, and their ultimate redemption." The younger disciples, who had been busy with the firewood and the offerings, drew closer. They sat on the periphery of the circle, their breath held in anticipation. The very deer of the forest seemed to stop their grazing, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. The story within a story began to weave its spell, pulling everyone present from the quiet woods of Naimisharanya into the tumultuous palaces of Hastinapura. A profound silence descended upon the forest of Naimisha. The crackle of the sacred fire and the rustle of the leaves faded into a singular, expectant void. Saunaka watched the son of Lomaharshana with a steady gaze, acknowledging the sacred duty Sauti was about to perform. The air was thick with the scent of destiny. Sauti closed his eyes for a moment, offered a silent prayer to the ancestors, and then he began the tale that would echo through the ages. The Foundations of Kuru, Chapter 2, The Cosmic Seed. The son of Lomaharshana, Ugrasrava Sauti, cleared his throat, and the very wind in the Naimisha forest seemed to hold its breath. He looked upon the venerable Saunaka, whose face was a map of 1,000 meditations. "O Kulapati," Sauti began, his voice shimmering with the resonance of a temple bell. "You ask for the history of the Bharatas, a tale that is the very breath of the universe. To speak of the Kurus is to speak of the stars, the earth, and the eternal dharma that binds them." Saunaka nodded, his eyes reflecting the flickering flames of the Agnihotra. Beside him, a young disciple named Aruni leaned forward, his hands trembling slightly with the excitement of the moment. "We seek the root of the great tree," Saunaka urged. "Tell us of the beginning, before the kings walked the earth, when the gods themselves whispered the secrets of the lineage to the rishis. Tell us how the seed of the Kuru race was planted in the fertile soil of time." Sauti closed his eyes, centering his spirit. He offered a silent salutation to Narayana and Nara, the supreme beings, and to Saraswati, the goddess of speech. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of eons. "In the beginning," he said, "there was only darkness, unfathomable and still. Then, like a golden spark in the void, appeared the Mahadyoni, the great egg of Brahman. It was the source of all light, the vessel of all potentiality, containing the seeds of every soul that would ever draw breath." Sauti's hands traced the shape of the cosmos in the air. From that golden egg emerged the Lord of creatures, the progenitor who fashioned the elements. He birthed the sun and the moon, the mountains and the seas, and from his mind he brought forth the great sages who would guide the world. This is the stage upon which the Bharatas would eventually walk, a world born of divine thought and sustained by the heat of sacrifice. Saunaka listened, the cosmic scale of the narrative expanding his own consciousness. He saw Sauti not just as a man, but as a conduit for the eternal Veda. "The lineage of the moon," Sauti continued, turning his gaze back to the Kulapati. "The Chandravansha began with Soma, the celestial nectar. It flowed through the veins of kings who were like gods, men of such power that their footsteps shook the heavens and their words commanded the elements themselves." Another Brahmana, the thoughtful Pippalada, moved closer to the circle, his heart stirred by the mention of the ancient kings. Sauti acknowledged him with a glance before continuing. "This story I bring you is the poem of Krishna Dwaipayana Vyasa. It is known as Jaya, victory. It is a mirror for the soul. In the deeds of the Bharatas, every man finds his own struggle, in their triumphs his own hope, and in their tragedies his own warnings." "Consider the Bharata race as a mighty tree," Sauti said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The sons of Dhritarashtra are the branches of passion, rooted in greed and fueled by pride. But the sons of Pandu are the branches of righteousness, watered by the tears of devotion and strengthened by the winds of hardship. Today we begin to trace the growth of this tree from its very first sprout." Saunaka felt the gravity of the tale. He realized that the history of the Kurus was not a dead thing of the past, but a living entity that demanded to be understood. "Speak then of the ancestors, Sauti," he commanded softly. "Speak of King Kuru, who gave his youth for his father's sake. Speak of Dushyanta and the brave Bharata, whose name our very land carries to this day. We are ready to receive the nectar." Aruni and Pipalata sat shoulder to shoulder, their differences in age and experience forgotten in their shared wonder. The forest of Naimisha had transformed. The mundane world had fallen away, replaced by the shimmering palaces and ancient forests of a time when the gods walked among men. They were no longer mere listeners. They were witnesses to the unfolding of destiny. Sauti took a final, deep breath, the scent of the forest filling his lungs. He looked at Sanaka one last time, a silent pact of truth passing between them. "Then listen, O Brahmanas," Sauti proclaimed, "to the story of the Kuru clan, the descendants of the moon, the keepers of the Bharata flame. It begins with the ancient kings who forged the foundations of our world." And with those words, the great recitation began in earnest. The Foundations of Kuru, Chapter 3, The Lineage of the Flame. The embers of the Agnihotra pulsed like a living heart in the center of the clearing. Sauti leaned toward the gathered sages, his shadow stretching long against the ancient trees of Naimisha. "To understand the fruit, O Saunaka, one must first honor the soil," Sauti whispered. "Before the kings of the Kuru line claimed the earth, the great rishis established the path of Dharma. We begin with the Brigas, the clan of fire, for your own blood, O Kulapati, flows from that primordial spark." A young disciple named Samid moved silently through the circle, his arms laden with fresh samid sticks to feed the sacred fire. The scent of melting ghee rose in a thick, sweet cloud, mingling with the sharp aroma of pine and damp earth. Saunaka closed his eyes, inhaling the essence of the yajna. "The Brigas are the keepers of the flame," Saunaka murmured. "Speak of the patriarch, the one who was born from the very thought of the Creator." Sauti raised his hand, and the rustle of the forest canopy seemed to harmonize with his voice. "In the first age, when the world was young and the gods walked the mountain peaks, the Lord Brahma performed a great sacrifice. From the blazing heat of his tapas, from the very heart of the sacrificial fire, Brigu emerged. He was the embodiment of the sacred spark, a sage whose wisdom was as unyielding as the sun. Pipalata, the thoughtful Brahmana, leaned in, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames. Sauti turned to him, his voice deepening with the weight of the genealogy. From Brigu came the line of masters. Think of Chayavana, the sage of such immense power that his meditation caused the earth to tremble. He was a man who understood that the spirit is a forge, and the trials of life are but the hammers that shape the soul's true purpose. "The history of the Brigas is the history of the Bharata's conscience," Sauti continued, turning back to Saunaka. "For it was the sages who taught the kings that power without dharma is but a dry leaf in the wind. They taught that the greatest sacrifice is not the burning of wood, but the burning of ego. This is the foundation upon which the Kuru ancestors built their throne, a foundation of wisdom and restraint." Aruni sat beside Saunaka, his young face illuminated by the flickering light. He felt the ancient stories stirring in his own heart. "Is it true, Sauti?" Aruni asked softly, "that the kings were once the students of the forest?" Saunaka placed a steadying hand on the boy's shoulder. "The kings were the sword, Aruni," Saunaka answered, "but the sages were the whetstone that gave them their edge." Sauti nodded in approval. Indeed, the lineage of the moon, the Chandravansha, did not begin with steel, but with spirit. Before the chariots thundered across the plains of Kurukshetra, there were the quiet halls of the ancestors. There was King Puru, who understood the weight of a father's sorrow, and Dushyanta, who found love and destiny in the deep shade of a hermitage much like this one. "The story of the Brigus and the early Kurus is a river," Sauti proclaimed, his voice rising in a rhythmic chant. It flows from the high peaks of the gods down into the valleys of men. It gathers the silt of human suffering and the gold of divine grace. We are the vessels, O Brahmanas, meant to carry this water to the thirsty world. Are you prepared to follow the river to its source? The forest of Naimisha fell into a profound silence. Even the nocturnal birds seemed to hush their cries to hear the tale. Samid and Aruni sat side by side, the age difference between the disciple and the student vanishing in the shared gravity of the moment. They felt the presence of their ancestors in the rustle of the leaves and the breath of the wind. The world of the Kurus was no longer a legend, it was a living truth. Sauti took a slow breath, the scent of the yajna smoke lingering in his throat. He looked at the circle of expectant faces, his heart full of the epic he was born to carry. Then let us begin the Chronicle of the Kings, he said, his voice a low thrum of power. Let us speak of the ancestors who forged the crown from the fire of the sages. Let us speak of the Kuru race, whose glory is the light of the Bharta flame. The Foundations of Kuru, Chapter 4, The Vengeance of Ruru. Sauti's voice deepened as the night air grew cold. Listen, O Sonaka, for the history of your house is a tapestry of both light and shadow. Among the Brigas was Ruru, a youth of fierce intellect and unyielding tapas. His story is a warning to those who allow the fires of the heart to consume the wisdom of the soul. For even a Brahmana, when blinded by grief, may stray from the path of ahimsa, the sacred vow of non-injury. Ruru spent his youth in the deep solitudes of the forest, his mind a vessel for the ancient Vedas. He was the son of Pramati, born into a legacy of spiritual might. Yet, for all his learning, Ruru's heart remained like a dry forest in summer, waiting for a single spark to ignite it. He did not yet know that the greatest trials of Dharma come not from the gods, but from the tether of human attachment. The spark arrived in the form of Pramadvara, the daughter of a celestial nymph. Ruru beheld her in a glade where the lotuses bloomed like fallen stars. Her presence was a quiet hymn, and Ruru, the disciplined ascetic, felt his tapas tremble. Love, swift and inexorable, bound their souls together. They were betrothed, and the forest itself seemed to celebrate the union of the sage and the maiden. But destiny is a weaver with a cruel hand. On the eve of their wedding, as Pramadvara played among the tall, shimmering grasses, a serpent lay hidden in the deep shade. Its fangs were the messengers of Yama, the lord of death. With a single strike, the maiden fell, her life's breath fluttering away like a leaf in a gale. Ruru found her there, cold and silent, the wedding garlands still fresh in her hair. Ruru's lamentation shook the very foundations of the heavens. He did not seek the solace of meditation, he demanded justice from the gods. Sensing the disturbance in the cosmic order, Matali, the messenger of the celestials, descended in a chariot of golden mist. "O Ruru," Matali spoke, "death is the debt all mortals pay. But if thou art willing to surrender half of thine own remaining years, the maiden may breathe once more." Without a moment's hesitation, Ruru cast his life into the scales of fate. The sacrifice was accepted. As the golden light of Matali's presence faded, Pramadvara's chest heaved with a sudden, sharp breath. She rose from the earth, her eyes meeting Ruru's. Life had been restored, but the price was not merely in years. It was a seed of darkness planted deep within Ruru's soul. Though his bride was returned, Ruru could not forgive the serpent race. He took up a staff of heavy iron and wandered the world, a specter of vengeance. Wherever he saw a snake, whether venomous or harmless, he struck it down in a fury that mocked his Brahmana birth. "I shall cleanse the earth of this crawling death," he vowed, his eyes clouded by a hate that mirrored the very poison he sought to destroy. One day, in a thicket of kusha grass, Ruru encountered an old, sluggish serpent known as a dundubha. It had no fangs and offered no threat to any living thing. Kuru raised his staff to crush it, but the creature did not flee. Instead, it looked up at him with eyes that held an ancient, weary sorrow. "Why dost thou strike one who has no venom, O son of Brigu?" the serpent hissed softly. The serpent shimmered and transformed into the radiant form of the sage Sahasrapat, cursed long ago to wear a scaly skin. "Vengeance is a poison that kills the one who carries it, Kuru," Sahasrapat warned. "Thou hast saved a life with love, yet thou seekest to destroy 1,000 with hate. Mercy is the highest tapas. To forgive is to truly transcend the wheel of suffering." Kuru stood humbled, the iron staff falling forgotten into the dirt. Sauti looked at Saunaka, the fire in the clearing now a low, steady amber. Thus, the Brigu sage learned that the destiny of the Kuru line would be forged, not in the heat of anger, but in the cool waters of restraint. For power, O Brahmanas, is a wild beast. Only Dharma can provide the leash. Saunaka nodded, the weight of the story settling over them all. The Foundations of Kuru, Chapter 5, The Rivalry of the Sisters. The smoke of the Agnihotra curled toward the canopy of the Naimisha forest, carrying the scent of clarified butter and toasted grains. Sauti adjusted his deerskin seat, his eyes reflecting the ancient embers. "O Saunaka, the path of the Kuru race is long, and its roots are entwined with the very structure of the cosmos. To understand the kingly lineage, we must first look to the heavens, to the daughters of Daksha and the great progenitor Kasyapa, whose legacy began not with a crown, but with a wager. In the Satya Yuga, the Rishi Kasyapa, a man of immense tapas and creative power, dwelt in a hermitage where the winds sang the samans. He had 2 wives, the sisters Kadru and Vinata, whose beauty was matched only by the depth of their devotion. Pleased by their service, the great sage offered them each a boon. "Ask of me," Kasyapa declared, "and let your desires be woven into the fabric of the coming ages." Kadru, driven by a vision of a lineage that would cover the earth, spoke first. "O Lord, grant me 1,000 sons, each powerful and radiant, to populate the world." Kasyapa turned then to Vinata, who sought a different strength. "I ask for but 2 sons, Vinata whispered, her voice like the rustle of leaves. "But let them be greater in might, vigor, and splendor than all the sons of my sister combined." The sage granted their wishes and retired to the mountains to continue his penance. In time, Kadru laid 1,000 eggs, and Vinata laid 2. The sisters placed them in jars of warm sand, tended by the heat of the sun. 500 years passed in the stillness of the forest. The eggs of Kadru began to crack, and from them emerged 1,000 serpents, their scales shimmering like jewels, their eyes burning with the fire of the earth. Kadru rejoiced, surrounding herself with her many children. Among them were Shisha, the cosmic serpent, and Vasuki, whose strength was legendary. Vinata watched with a heavy heart, for her 2 eggs remained silent and cold. The poison of jealousy, more potent than any snake's venom, began to seep into her spirit. "Why must I wait," she lamented, "while my sister walks the forest floor as a mother of thousands?" Driven by a momentary lapse of patience, Vinata broke one of her own eggs. From it emerged a son, Aruna, radiant as the dawn but unfinished. His upper body was perfectly formed, glowing with celestial light, but his lower limbs were unmade. Aruna looked upon his mother not with love, but with a gaze that held the weight of a divine decree. "Mother," he spoke, his voice resonating like a bell, "thou hast stunted my form for the sake of thy pride." Aruna's words were a prophecy of the ages to come. "Because of thy haste, thou shalt serve thy sister in bondage for 500 years. But do not break the 2nd egg, O Vinata. For if thou art patient, the sun within shall be the one to deliver thee from thy fate." With these words, Aruna ascended into the sky to become the charioteer of Surya, the sun god, leaving Vinata to contemplate the high price of her impatience. The years flowed like the holy Ganga, and the rivalry between the sisters grew. One day they beheld Ukaishravas, the celestial horse born from the churning of the ocean, galloping across the horizon. He was as white as the foam of the sea, a vision of purity. "Look, Vinata," Kadru exclaimed. "The horse is white, but see, his tail is black as the charred wood of a pyre." Vinata shook her head. "No, sister, he is white in every limb. Let us wager our very freedom on the truth of his color." Kadru, fearing she would lose, summoned her serpent sons. "My children," she commanded, "descend upon the horse and cover his tail with your dark bodies, so that he appears black to the eye. If you do not, I shall be a slave to Vinata." Most of her sons obeyed, fearing their mother's wrath. Among them was a great Naga, who stepped forward to lead the deception. "We shall do thy bidding, mother, and weave a shadow where there is light." "Thus," Sati concluded, his voice a low hum against the rustle of the forest leaves, "the stage was set for a great deceit." The sisters went to the horse, and Vinata, seeing the blackness of the tail, fell into servitude. But even in the darkness of trickery, Sonaka, the gods prepare a savior, for the second egg still lay in the sand, and within it the king of birds awaited his hour. Sonaka breathed in the cool night air, the cosmic drama unfolding in his mind like the petals of a lotus.